This is Democracy Watch. Marc, we have a brand new scandal that just surged into the spotlight as far as the U.S. Supreme Court is concerned. Can you explain what just happened between a far-right member of the U.S. Supreme Court, Samuel Alito, and Donald Trump that we just found out about?
Yeah, so it turns out that one of Sam Alito, Justice Alito's law clerks, former law clerks, applied for kind of a mid-level position in the Trump administration, and Donald Trump, being the diligent potential employer that he is, picked up the phone, called Justice Alito, and asked about this person. So I'm sure it was all on the up and up. We're assured, and lo and behold, shortly after that, Donald Trump's lawyers filed an emergency petition in the U.S. Supreme Court to try to block the sentencing in the New York criminal case. I mean, give me a break. If Donald Trump wants us to believe that he just happened to be doing due diligence and doing a reference check on this guy, and it just so happened that it was on the eve of his lawyers trying to block the criminal case for sentencing in New York. And by the way, let's not forget the Jack Smith, trying to block the Jack Smith report, which is not yet before the Supreme Court, but probably heading there. I mean, this should be like red alarm bells should be ringing and sirens should be blaring all across the country. What the hell is a U.S. Supreme Court justice doing, taking a call from the incoming president of the United States when sure, maybe the petition had not yet been filed, but it was certainly foreseeable that Donald Trump would be bringing litigation before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I know this is the most tired game in politics today, but what do you think Republicans would say if Joe Biden called a U.S. Supreme Court justice, or Barack Obama had called a U.S. Supreme Court justice back when he had a majority on the court before some litigation that he was involved in was going to go before the court? What do you think Republicans would say in the exact same scenario if the roles were reversed?
They would be calling for impeachment. They would be like, we need to start impeachment of Barack Obama as soon as he takes the oath of office. Yeah. Right? Mitch McConnell would have announced, you know what, we will attend the swearing in. We'll go to the lunch in the Capitol afterwards, and then we'll convene for the impeachment trial. I mean, Mitch McConnell would have been all over this, as would the Republicans in Congress. Fox News would be doing special news coverage of it. Steve Bannon would have a special war room edition on it. It would be wall to wall among the conservative media outlets, and that's where the Republicans would be.
Well, look, I don't want to give a pass to Donald Trump because, it takes two to tango, and he is as big a part of this as Samuel Alito. So I want to make clear that that just by virtue of the corruption happening so frequently doesn't serve as some pass for him to keep doing it. So that's his corruption on full display. With that said, we expect that from him. Shouldn't mean that he has a pass, but we expect that from him. Why would Samuel Alito, as a sitting U.S. Supreme Court justice, who, by the way, should know better, why would he take the call?
That's the right question. I think you put your finger on it, because you're right. It is not to give Donald Trump a pass. But you know what? Like, Donald Trump is trying to work every angle, and we expect that from him. And Sam Alito should know that that's what Donald Trump is doing. And even if he doesn't, even if it was, let's say, Barack Obama, I think a Supreme Court justice has to ask themselves, is this a call I should be taking? There are any number of people as the employer of a former law clerk who he could be talking to in the White House. He could have said, look, Mr. President, I'm not going to take your call. Or he could have had someone say, Mr. President, I'm not going to take your call, but have your chief of staff call me, and I'm happy to give a reference. Or have the White House counsel's office call me. Or have, someone in the Department of Justice, have someone else call me to provide a reference check. To provide a letter of recommendation, to provide an oral recommendation, my law clerk is someone you should hire. Why on earth does a U.S. Supreme Court justice need to convey that to the president-elect? There are any other number of ways that could have been communicated. I mean, obviously, if someone clerked for a very conservative justice on the Supreme Court, like Justice Alito, I think the White House probably has the drill that they see the world ideologically or jurisprudentially the way that Donald Trump sees the world as well. Like, why even have to have this? But if they felt there was a need, there were any other avenues to have that conversation.
You know what I think, first of all, is the most ironic part of this is We have seen Trump throw all of these people who he was so closely connected with under the bus the moment they lose their political convenience. He claimed, that he didn't know, or that they were just some low-level volunteer, about Gordon Sondland and George Papadopoulos and Michael Cohen. And like everybody who loses their political convenience, suddenly they were some low-level coffee boy, right? But now we're supposed to believe that he was doing his due diligence and doing reference checks on some random clerk who worked for Samuel Alito, that he had to call a U.S. Supreme Court justice during his presidential transition. To your earlier point, give me a break.
Look, it is clear that Donald Trump didn't call any references for his Secretary of Defense. It's
Right.
clear he didn't call any references for his first Attorney General nominee. I mean, can you imagine who was it that he called for Matt Gaetz? Like, do you think he called Kevin McCarthy? Do you think he called? Do you think who exactly do you think he called for
Right.
these other nominees of
Right, he has
very high stature?
The least qualified nominees who have more baggage than LAX on Thanksgiving break, and yet we're supposed to believe that he's calling in to make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet of some random law clerk for Samuel Alito. Wouldn't want to have somebody with baggage come into the administration that also just nominated Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Okay, so moving forward, at worst, what could have been said between Trump and Samuel Alito on this call? Why is it so dangerous in the lead up to the Supreme Court hearing this emergency petition by Trump? Why is it so dangerous to have this call take place?
Yeah, so there's the narrow and the broad. In the narrow sense, and I think this is what most people are focused on right now, is he could have said, we're about to file a petition and I really need you on this, right? I mean, like, it could have been very connected to just this New York thing. And that would be very bad, but that's actually the narrow thing. But just imagine what else he could have said. He could have said, Justice, I'm going to need you on a range of things in the coming days. And, you send me this guy, and I'm sure you'll want to send me other people in the future. And you may want you may want the Kennedy box. There may be other things you need. My door's always open, but I really need you to be with me on immigration policy and these other things. And that's just, obviously would be an outrageous thing to have happen. I hope the justice, if that happened, would push back on him. But, remember, Donald Trump has described as perfect phone calls. Phone calls in which he asked the Secretary of State of Georgia to find votes that don't exist. Yeah. He tried to intimidate and undermine the president of Ukraine, that led to his impeachment. Right. So Donald Trump doesn't have an excellent track record on either knowing what an appropriate phone call is or accurately describing it afterwards as appropriate. So there's really limitless possibility for how terrible Donald Trump could be in what kind of conversation he would initiate, even if, as was the case with the Secretary of State of Georgia or President Zelensky, they push back. Donald Trump, the damage would still be done.
Well, I know that we're looking at the fact that he used the prospect of doing a reference check for some former Alito clerk as kind of an excuse to get on the call, as kind of a distraction. But in fact, he could have used the prospect of saying, look, if you want me to elevate your clerks, which presumably you have a vested interest in doing because that helps Alito attract top talent, knowing that they can then ascend to the highest ranks of government once they're out of his office, we could already have the excuse, the other part of the quid pro quo right there in that Trump was using this person, the prospect of him getting promoted within the administration. Like, that could very well be the other half of the quid pro quo, with the first half, of course, being that he wanted this Supreme Court justice to rule in his favor on the emergency petition.
Yeah, look, you can go all the way back to 2017 and Donald Trump calling the FBI director to have dinner. Remember this?
Yeah.
He asked Comey to have dinner and basically
asked a loyalty pledge.
He asked him for a loyalty pledge.
Yeah.
I mean, again, another thing that Donald Trump said was perfectly perfect. So the thing is, I'm not saying that Justice Alito gave in to a quid pro quo. I'm saying Justice Alito should have been smart enough to know not to get on the phone call with Donald Trump because he has this history. For Donald Trump's sake, I'm not sure that Donald Trump would even accurately know if he had done a quid pro quo. It's kind of like table stakes for a conversation with Donald Trump that he says something inappropriate or he offers something or he connects things up that he shouldn't be. I mean, Donald Trump gives a press conference and basically says, I'm going to invade a NATO ally to steal part of their land. I may engage in, some type of economic economic terrorism against Canada to make them a state. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to ignore the treaty obligations we have and just seize land in the middle of Central America. Like, Donald Trump just says this stuff as if it's totally normal. So just imagine what he would say to a Supreme Court justice where he thinks his interests are at stake.
Right. Well, look, you have been a leader in the space of holding corrupt judges to account, and you do that with Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet you founded to focus on everything voting in elections. It's an excellent resource that I use on a daily basis, and especially as legacy media continues to fail to meet the moment that we're in, I'm looking more and more to Democracy Docket to fill that void that was left by a failing mainstream media right now. So for those who are watching right now, if you want to support Marc and his team, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.